Ever feel like your own brain is like a total mystery? I mean, we always compare the mind to a computer, but what if that's not even close? Like, what if thinking is less like a digital machine and more like something quantum?
I like where you're going with this.
Today we're diving deep into this paper. Get this, it's called Reconceptualizing the Mind Through Quantum Information Theory.
Whoa.
Right. It's by Dr. Fabio Di Bello. He's a senior customer training manager at Wiley Global Technology.
Okay, so he's coming at this from a tech background then.
Yeah, which makes it even more interesting, I think. So it's dense stuff, but the ideas are wild. Like Dr. Di Bello is basically saying our brains might actually work on a quantum level.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But to really get into that, maybe we should start with why those old school models of the brain just don't cut it.
Exactly, yeah. Like trying to explain the brain with just classical physics and computers. It's kind of like, I don't know.
Trying to understand a hurricane by just looking at one raindrop.
Perfect analogy. You're not seeing the whole crazy storm.
Right. Our brains are not static. They're not just these linear processors like your phone. It's all dynamic, constantly changing. There's randomness, interconnectedness, emotions, memories, all tangled up together. Classical models just can't handle that.
So how does quantum mechanics even enter the picture here?
Well, quantum mechanics is all about embracing uncertainty. It says that multiple possibilities can exist at the same time. And that feels a lot closer to how our minds actually work, right?
Okay, so you're saying there are parts of quantum mechanics that actually make more sense when we try to understand our own W1 minds.
Exactly. One example is this concept of superposition. So in quantum mechanics, a single particle can exist in multiple states at the same time. It's not until we measure it that it collapses into a single state.
So it's not just that we don't know the state of the particle, it's that it's really in multiple states at once.
Precisely. Now, think about your own thoughts. How often do we have completely different ideas or doubts or desires in our minds at the same time?
Like all the time, right? This job offer sounds amazing, but what about my current team? That kind of thing.
Yes. Or maybe you're feeling both excited and nervous about the future at the same time. Dr. Di Bello is arguing that this very human experience, this ability to hold multiple, maybe even opposing ideas or emotions simultaneously, it's actually more aligned with this idea of quantum superposition.
That's wild. So our minds are like holding a universe of possibilities at once, not just following some straight line of code like a computer program.
Exactly. And that's just one example. We haven't even gotten to entanglement yet. Dr. Di Bello talks about how entanglement might actually be how our brains connect different thoughts and memories and emotions.
Okay, entanglement. You're going to have to explain that one. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this quantum stuff.
Yeah, entanglement is definitely one of the weirdest parts of quantum mechanics. Basically, it means that you can have two particles, right? And they can be really, really far apart, like across the universe from each other. But somehow, they're still connected. If you change one, the other one changes instantly, like there's some invisible thread between them.
Whoa. Okay, so how does that even make sense in terms of our brains?
Well, think about it like this. You're listening to a song you loved as a kid, right? And suddenly, you have all these vivid memories come flooding back. Smells, images, even emotions. It's like that song unlocked a whole chain of connected experiences in your brain.
That happens to me all the time. It's so weird how one little thing can trigger such a huge wave of memories.
Exactly. And those memories aren't stored separately, like files in a cabinet. They're all tangled up together in this massive network of associations. So Dr. Di Bello is saying that entanglement could be how these networks form in the first place and how our brains can jump between them so quickly.
Interesting. So it's more like a giant web than a filing cabinet. But hold on, if our brains are doing all this quantum stuff with the multiple possibilities and entangled connections, how do we even function? Like, why isn't the world just a confusing mess all the time?
That's where decoherence comes in. Think of it like the bridge between the quantum world, which is all weird and uncertain, and the everyday world that we experience.
Okay, so decoherence is like what brings us back down to earth.
Exactly. Let's say you're trying to decide what to have for dinner. At first, you might have a bunch of different options in your head. Pizza, tacos, whatever. All these possibilities just floating around.
Totally. Pizza, tacos, sushi. Way too many choices.
Right. But then you start narrowing it down. Maybe you think about how hungry you are or what you can afford or if you want something healthy. As you get more information, you eliminate some of those options until you finally make a decision.
And that's decoherence. Like all those possibilities collapsing into one outcome.
Exactly. It's our interaction with the world, all those external factors that forces our brains to choose one specific path, one definite reality. It grounds us, basically. Otherwise, we'd be stuck in this constant state of maybe about everything.
Wow. That's kind of mind-blowing. But it makes you wonder, if our brains are constantly making these choices, collapsing possibilities into actions and thoughts, what does that mean for free will? Like, do we even have control over our own minds?
Now you're getting into the really big questions. I mean, if our thoughts are shaped by quantum processes, by superposition and entanglement and decoherence, how much agency do we really have? That's something philosophers have been debating forever, and Dr. Di Bello's research adds a whole new layer to it.
Definitely makes you think. But hey, on a more optimistic note, if we can tap into this quantum realm, if our brains are really that powerful, what does that mean for the future of consciousness? Like, what are we capable of?
That's what's so exciting about this whole field. We're just starting to understand the potential here. In fact, Dr. Di Bello's paper even brings up something called Hilbert space.
Hilbert space. Okay, before we go any further, I think we're going to need you to break that one down for us.
You're right. That's jumping ahead a bit. Let's make sure everyone's following along.
Okay, so Hilbert space is like a map of all the possibilities in our brains, like a blueprint, but for our quantum minds.
That's a really good way to think about it, yeah. And what's really cool is that Dr. Di Bello actually uses Hilbert space to try and model how our brains take all those possibilities and turn them into actual thoughts and emotions.
So we're talking about mapping out things like consciousness in multidimensional space.
Exactly. He even uses it to represent really complex emotions, like love. He's basically saying that something like love isn't just one thing. It's a whole network of other feelings and memories all tangled together in Hilbert space.
Wow. Okay, so to recap, we started by talking about the brain as a computer, and now we're talking about quantum possibilities and multidimensional spaces. That's quite a journey.
It really is. And I think the biggest takeaway is that our brains are way more powerful and complex than we ever imagined.
You know, definitely. But you mentioned this earlier. This is all still very theoretical. Really.
Oh, absolutely. We're just scratching the surface here. There's so much we still don't understand about the brain, let alone consciousness.
True. But it's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think even if quantum mechanics doesn't end up being the answer to everything, Dr. Di Bello's research forces us to think differently. We can't just rely on those old models anymore.
Totally agree. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. Superposition, entanglement, Hilbert space. That was quite a depth dive.
It really was.
I don't know about you, but I'm definitely looking at my own thoughts a little differently after this.
Me too. It really makes you appreciate the incredible potential of the human mind. And maybe even question what's really going on in there.
Exactly. What is reality if our brains are quantum computers, collapsing possibilities into the world we experience? I mean, that's a question for a whole other deep dive. But for now, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of your own quantum mind. This has been the deep dive, and we'll catch you next time as we explore even more fascinating topics.